Hello. All right, today's talk is going to be a little bit about self-inquiry. And I say that when, I want to give it, for example, how many times has someone maybe just criticized you in a way that, or said something maybe criticizing where you identified yourself with it? Like you felt it in the stomach or in the chest and it just really hurt. That could be, anything. Maybe someone says they don't like the way you do the dishes, or your partner doesn't like a shirt that you put on, or even your child can say something they didn't like. And if we're identified with whatever they said, meaning where we get like offended and we just get really hurt from what they said, that means essentially we're identified to it. So there's some belief that is subconsciously there that's activating a part of us. And usually what happens is we'll feel it in the body first. And so, but from there, we'll get like, you might feel a burning sensation in the chest or a knot in your stomach as soon as the person says whatever they did, whatever they said, and you're identified with it. You might feel it somewhere first in the body. But then what happens is, then we start attaching thoughts to that, which could be a belief. Like maybe I'm not good enough to wear this shirt. Or, there could be some fear beneath it. Like, oh, if I didn't speak, someone said I didn't talk very well and publicly, like me on this video. If someone said that it wasn't very well, it didn't come out very well, if I feel that I'm not a good speaker deep down, or I have that fear, then I'm going to identify with what that person said about me speaking publicly on this video. But if someone says, you're a horrible speaker, and I'm not really identified with it, whereas I'm just like, okay, they think I'm horrible, whatever, then I'm not identified with it. So do you understand the difference? I feel like that's a great example, especially here on YouTube, where you'll get comments of people saying sometimes just harsh things, and we really are not identified with it because we're just like, okay, whatever, it's some stranger. But if your best friend, partner, or child says like, oh, Mom, you sounded horrible, then it might hurt me a little bit more deeper, and I might identify with that criticism. So again, I'm going to get defensive. So I'd like to talk today about an acronym that we talk about in our school that's essentially a community in timer insight meditation. And this acronym is called RAIN. And I want to talk about a little bit RAIN. So the R for RAIN means to recognize. To recognize that, oh, something just activated me. And typically, we can see that first of all through the thoughts. We start thinking, why did he say that about me? Or why isn't she answering my phone call? Or whatever, or why did that person say that about me? So it's recognizing that we're activated. And when we really start to get in touch with our body, we'll notice that our body reacts first. So any emotion that, activates us, when we get emotionally charged, our body responds first. So information is stored in our body. And so when someone does say something that does, you do identify with it, like it activates you, that criticism or whatever it was, for example, your body will feel it first. You'll feel like all kinds of different sensations depending on what it is. Tightness in the throat, knot in the stomach. Earlier I felt something in my chest, a burning sensation in my chest. But as soon as you feel it in the body, then what happens is we attach thoughts to it. And that's where it'll bring up, fears or just maybe negative beliefs that we have about ourselves. And then we get stuck in looping because then the mind's going and we're activated. So again, the first part of RAIN is to recognize that something has activated me. And that's why I'm identifying with what this person said. And that's why I could be getting defensive as well. Okay. Now the second part of RAIN is the A, which is allow. And this for me is the biggest part, because sometimes allowing takes time to really, because this is the thing, if something activates us, like if it's touching in on a core belief that maybe I'm not good enough, for example, if I'm dating someone and this person doesn't call me back, and what will happen is if that person doesn't call me back, then it triggers that, I have abandonment wounding. And I'm very aware of my abandonment wounding, but when it happens, if we're not aware of it, then we can get stuck in a trigger state. So we're just activated for however long. And when I say that, I mean that we are, just stuck in thinking negative thoughts. So it's like, why isn't this person calling me? I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. So forth. So sometimes this allowing part takes essentially a long time, depending on how big the trauma could be that's getting triggered, activated. I hope that makes sense. So again, we recognize when something has came up, something's here. The second part is allowing whatever is here, whether it's sadness, anger, anxiety, like me having maybe anxiety to speak on YouTube about this. It's like I feel the anxiety is there. I'm like, okay, anxiety, I see you're there. So just allowing, and sometimes this allowing, like I said, it can go for a long time, and you have to be okay with that. Now, the third part of this RAIN is investigate. Now, one of our teachers, Tara Brock, likes to say it's a double I because it's an intimate investigation where we really are trying to see what am I believing with this criticism that happened? For example, if someone criticizes my video and I'm really upset about it, why am I upset about it? What am I believing about what that person said, that criticism that they said? What am I believing about myself? So it's just getting that intimate investigation of what am I believing here? What's the fear? Or what's the anger? What's the sadness? What's beneath it? The problem is that if we're very activated, then our conscious mind is offline because we're in a triggered state. Now, when we're in a triggered, activated state, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. So when we're activated, we can't make a clear decision to understand what's truly beneath Why am I feeling so activated? Why am I so defensive with what this person is saying? So in order for us to really be able to investigate what's going on, we have to be at a pretty, like let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, we need to be around a 3. So sometimes if we are very activated, then that's when we need to, I like one of my other teachers, Stan Eisenstein, he likes to say that whatever the problem is that activated us, we just try to set it down on a workbench, and then we come back to our body and breathe. Take some deep breaths, or maybe for a couple of days we have to nurture ourselves. Recently I've experienced where I've just experienced some grief, and there's days that I just have to stay in that grief and feel it and not try to push it away and investigate why I'm so sad about this, because I'm sad, and it's really hard to try to do an intimate investigation as what's beneath this sadness. Is it fear? What am I believing about this sadness? So I hope that makes sense, that when we investigate what's going on with us, why am I so activated from this criticism? It's usually held in the body. And when we're activated, we're completely disconnected from our body. We're in our head. We're thinking, and just looping. Okay? Now, the end of rain is what Tara Brach likes to say is the nurturing part. But one of the original teachers, Michelle McDonald, she talks about how it's non-identification. And it's definitely a little bit of both. So for example, I recognize that I got upset this person said I'm not good at speaking. I allowed that sadness to be here. I tried to find it in the body, and if I didn't, it's okay. Just letting myself understand that, okay, I'm sad. That person didn't like my talk. Then I go into that investigation. Why am I so sad that this person doesn't like my talk? What am I believing about myself that this person said about my talk? Now, if I'm centered and grounded, and I can investigate, and a lot of times, you guys, this investigation part as well is when you sit in meditation and you ask, what am I believing? And when your mind isn't activated, you're in a calm state. You're not trying to think of what it is. All of a sudden, your intuition and your body will start speaking to you, and you'll get these downloads. And whatever it says to you, I always recommend I invite you to write it down. And this is where meditation really helps. So again, going back to the nurturing, that in of rain is to nurture. Okay, I see that the belief is that I feel that I'm not good enough to talk on YouTube, for example. I see that fear is here. Now what I want to do is I want to nurture myself. Give myself her love for that. Give myself compassion for thinking that. Not trying to change it. Just being like, okay, Sarah, I see you feel you're not smart enough to make YouTube videos. Okay. I understand how you can feel that way, and I'm here to hold you in that space of love and awareness. But I still want to be curious. And so that's the nurturing. Now, the non-identification which is definitely very hard when we're activated, but that's for me to be, okay, how can I be the observer of this? How can I step outside and not be in it, in the situation of I'm identified as a not smart enough to talk on YouTube? How can I just be the observer as, why am I thinking that? That would be the non-identification. So, you know, when we have identification to these things, we feel it in our body. We can't just make an identification to something go away. Like, oh, Sarah, you're just thinking you're not smart enough to make YouTube videos. I can't just make that belief go away, right? Because these identifications that we have are programming that comes from typically our childhood or just young adults. So this is stuff that we really need to work on and really need to bring healing to. So, and that all starts with just listening to some of the other videos I have about recognizing emotions, recognizing the thoughts that are coming up. And once you do that and you start sitting in meditation and learning to quiet the mind, eventually, then you learn to become the observer of your human experience. And it takes some time, but it is the beginning of so much freedom, even freedom to your suffering. And believe me, I know through experience. I have a lot of trauma I've dealt with in my younger life. Younger, just childhood and teen years. And ever since I've learned how to meditate and create awareness around all of these programming and patterns, and sometimes it's really difficult. Not sometimes, it is very difficult. But it only gets easier because you learn how to just love yourself unconditionally for the things you're learning and unpeeling about yourself. And like I've said in previous videos, the two biggest things is the awareness of what's coming up, and that other huge, huge part is the allowing. It's probably the biggest part in this healing journey, is learning how to allow all parts of ourselves be welcome here. Thank you so much for joining, and there will be another talk just a little bit more deeper next video.